All right, you see the title here, 377 days. We thought the trip back from the ark was long. Didn't we? Yeah. Slugging on an iced tea and all that. Life was pretty cushy, actually. But 377 days from the time Noah and his family climbed aboard to the time they exited. Wow. And we have a kind of a neat pic of the ark showing a contrast to the Titanic, which did not do so well, and a 747 plane, and just the gross tonnage and the capacity. I thought it was interesting. The capacity of the ark had the capacity of 522 railroad stock cars. And going to the ark, which again, Dave, that wasn't real. But it was the actual size of the ark. It's a scale. And it was hard in walking and seeing the exhibits, and it was fantastic, almost not to feel like you were in a mall because of it's huge, with an H, huge. And to see what God had done in saving 8 lives and humanity and saving the animal life, it's just fantastic. So while as we're looking at this, and this is coinciding with our message today in the next few weeks, last week we looked at Genesis 7:11. We started with that. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, pretty precise, isn't it? On that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of heavens were opened. If you notice what happened first, there was this catastrophic tectonic plates where all the subterranean waters were coming up and changing things dramatically, and also we had rain bursting forth, coming down, a lot of turbulence, And we closed with this verse last week. And those that entered the ark, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded, and the Lord shut him, Noah, and his family in. And this is where we pick up. The flood continued from day 1 for 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark and rose high above the earth. Now, Noah waited 7 days. He went into the ark, waited 7 days before the 40 days of rain started. And that bursting forth of the subterranean waters, those deep waters. And I can't even imagine. We've been watching hurricanes and earthquakes, small little bits. And I mean, they weren't small to the people who were suffering from them. But can you imagine 150 days of turbulence from the deep waters? 150 years of surging destruction. Unbelievable. Causing the ocean floors to break up. And even a supercontinent to break up into 7 continents. At least starting the process. The flood continued for 40 days on the earth. The waters increased, bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed. Do you catch this? The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. 5 months. Not 4.5 hours in a van coming back with air conditioning. 5 months of these waters until it started to at least stop and then subside. And you notice this word prevail, the actual title is, a subtitle, The Waters Were Stronger Than the Earth. And we'll see this word prevail, or this concept that the waters were stronger. There is an undoing of creation. Prevailed, and used multiple times. The waters were stronger than the earth. As the ark was engulfed in this deluge of water. Because God is throwing creation in reverse. In fact, I love the way the Good News Bible puts it. It goes all the way back to the very beginning, the type of watery chaos that we had in the beginning before God started actually creating and making. Genesis 1 from the Good News. In the beginning, when God created the universe, the earth was formless and desolate. The raging ocean that covered everything was engulfed in total darkness, and the Spirit of God, the power of God, was moving over the water. Creation thrown in reverse. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth. The ark floated on the face of the waters. And there's that word again. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. In fact, there's an emphasis in the original language, doesn't show up in the Hebrew. The waters were great, exceedingly, exceedingly. Has something ever happened where you said that no, but that wasn't enough? You had to get the emphasis out? When I was a mailman in Chicago, I used to get attacked by dogs a lot. If I didn't get attacked at least 2 or 3 times, I thought, well, I felt, I don't know, lonely. I don't know. And so dogs coming at you, you're going, no, right? What if they don't stop? No! Right? And that's not, no! Like that, you know what I'm saying? No, no, no. Well, this is what this is. This is emphasis. It was great. If you went through a storm in a tent and you had a tremendous thunderstorm, it would be great, wouldn't it? Well, what if you added exceedingly? And then on top of that, you add exceedingly. We can't imagine what they went through for 5 months. To the point where mountains are covered. And originally, we don't know how high mountains were at that time, but there was 150 days of dynamics that violently changed the earth below in the waters and above on the earth. That caused mountains to come to, those tectonic plates to come up and push up. We know today that mountains, they push up. They grow every year, a day or two. And the problem we face with those who are evolutionists and they believe that everything was uniform, right? That they're moving at the rate of 2 feet a year. So we go back millions of years. And well, how about a catastrophic event that changed things and had things moving really quickly and then started to slow down? And that's happened in creation. Here's an example. Let's say you're on the expressway and it's 70 miles an hour. You're driving 70 miles an hour, right? But as you get off, you exit, and you slow down to a yield or stop sign, you're going 5 miles. About 5 miles an hour as you're hitting that yield or stop sign, right? You were going 70, but now you're going 5. But what if you have an observer who's by that stop sign or yield sign, and they're watching you go 5 miles an hour, and they presume that you've been going 5 miles an hour all that time on the expressway, right? See, that's what's happening with evolution. Everything's been the same. It's just going at the same. Well, no. There was this catastrophic event that, at least for 150 days, changed the surface of the earth. And now we see the slow ending, coming into that yield sign, almost, where we see that slow moving up of those mountains. But I can tell you, it happened a lot quicker when the waters of the deep broke forth and the rain came down for 40 days. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? I mean, really? Quick change, now we see a slow change. And we're getting this theme over and over again. The waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. Here it is again. The waters prevailed. The waters were stronger than the earth. The waters prevailed above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. That's more than 20 feet over the highest mountain at that time. And that's why the flood can't be partial. Have you ever filled a cup over at the rim of the cup? It goes all over the place. More than 20 feet above a mountaintop, if it broke out just in one area, it would cover it from end to end, the whole earth. Everything would reach the same elevation as far as the water. Remember those sea fossils we find in the Himalayan mountains in Ararat? And even in South America, they find whale fossils on mountains. I mean, come on. Think about it. Let's break away for a moment, too. How did things dry up? I missed a lot of water, right? Here's the question, where did all the water go? Well, we know God intervened in causing this upheaval. But we also see that how God slowed things down and caused things to dry. And I'm going to read from Do we have a Genesis 1:8 here? No, we don't. Okay. Where did all the water go? I'm just going to read from Genesis 8:1. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts of the livestock that were on the ark with him, and God made a wind blow over the earth. And I guess that's right here. This is what we're looking at. And the water subsided. So he caused this wind. We see after the flood, God caused this wind, and it just dried everything out. As he had the subterranean water stopped, the rain stopped. And later, during the time of Moses, we have this divinely induced wind that divided the Red Sea so that people can cross. Remember that story? The riverbed was dried out, allowed to open. Let's go there. Okay, stay there. I'm going to read from Exodus 14. The angel of God who was going before the host of Israel moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved before them and stood behind them, protecting the nation of Israel, because they had left Egypt. Coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel, and there was the cloud and the darkness. It lit up the night without one coming near the other all night. So the Egyptians were not able to get to Israel. But looking at this picture, think about this. Exodus 14:21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. See, he uses things like this. He has control over nature. He created nature. Remember when Jesus calmed the storm? Now back to our text. The waters prevailed. They overwhelmed the earth. They were stronger than the earth. Prevailed over the mountains by over 20 feet. And all flesh died that moved on the earth. Birds, livestock, beasts, all swarming creatures that swarmed on the earth, and all mankind, except those who were preserved and protected and saved in the ark, including the Nephilim that died. Those offspring of the sons of God, angels, and those divine beings and the daughters of men. Everything on dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life died. You know, God gave mankind, he gave us the breath of life, making us a living being. And now here in the flood, he removes it, and mankind dies, except 8. And life wasn't just simply destroyed. They didn't simply die. They were wiped out. A catastrophic event. In justice, in judgment, but also with grace, with preservation of life. Let me read in verse 23. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground. Man, animals, and creeping things, and birds of the heavens. They were blotted out. Did you say blotted out with me? Blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left and those who were with him in the ark. You know, we need to pay attention to what Jesus said, because Jesus acknowledged the flood. He acknowledged the days of Noah. Remember, as in the days of Noah? And he's comparing it to the tribulation. He's comparing it to the time when he will return, where there will be justice, there will be punishment, but there will be safety. There will be preservation for believers. In Revelation, it talks about blotting out, but actually not blotting out for those who are in Christ, who are believers. In Revelation chapter 3, this speaks to the church presently, from the time of John wrote this all the way until the future when the tribulation starts. But the idea is for the church today. This is the church of Sardis, and I love this. Let me just read this one. The one who conquers will be clothed thus in white garments and will never blot out his name. I will never blot out his name from the book of life. I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. Just as in Genesis chapter 7, life was blotted out in justice and punishment, but also there were those who were saved through faith. Whether it's Genesis chapter 7 or as we look to the future, as Jesus says, during the tribulation time, there will be a destruction. It will be catastrophic. but there will also be those who are saved. And we need a thorough understanding of this, what I'm about to share with you. And it's interesting. I was going to share this with our Wednesday class. I'm going to share this with our Sunday school because the context has to do with the false religions. But there's something that really fits for the message today because we get so confused about this and we sometimes feel guilty. Do you ever feel sometimes like because of your faith or because of the scriptures that you're being sort of judgmental? You ever feel like that? I like what John MacArthur wrote on this, and it covers a broad spectrum. But let me just read this to you. Ultimately, God does not send people to hell because of sin, but because of unforgiven sin. Think about that. Hell is populated by people whose sins were never forgiven. The difference between those who look forward to eternal life in heaven and those who will experience everlasting punishment in hell is not a matter of personal goodness, as other religions teach, but is bound up entirely in one word: forgiveness. Forgiveness. Since all have sinned, Romans 3, both eternal destinations are inhabited by people who were sinners in this life. Only those in heaven were granted divine forgiveness and the accompanying imputed righteousness that is appropriated by grace. We're singing to that through the faith in Jesus Christ. Simply stated, every person's greatest need is forgiveness of sin. Consequently, the greatest benefit of the gospel is its offer of divine pardon to those who believe. Isn't that great? And doesn't that make sense? It's all about forgiveness because we're all sinners, right? We become a Christian, we're still sinners. Paul says, I am the greatest of sinners. I am the least to deserve, and we don't deserve it, but that's what grace is all about. He blotted out he blotted out, God, every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man, animals, and creeping things, and the birds of the heaven. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark, those who believed and who responded to that invitation. And as we close in verse 24, and the waters, there it is again, prevailed on the earth 150 days. 150 days. You know, we got a glimpse of faith and righteousness from Noah in the Old Testament, where God was the judge also of the city of Jerusalem. And we see Noah's faith in this. Jerusalem was about to get a judgment by God, and we read in Ezekiel 14:14. God says, even if these three men, who was the first name? What's the first? Noah, Daniel, and Job. If they were in that city, they would be delivered, but by their own lives, by their righteousness, declares the Lord. That's how righteous Noah was, because he believed God, and it was considered righteousness. In Genesis chapter 7, we see that the refuge was the ark. Today, for us, it's not those who go into the ark, but it's for those who go and are in Jesus Christ. He is our refuge. God alone remains our fortress, our strong tower, our refuge, our place of protection. And in Psalm 46, we read, therefore, would you say therefore with me? Therefore, we will not fear though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea. Therefore, we will not fear, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. And what's the therefore? Or the because? Why? And here it is in verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Today in this era, what is in store for the forgiven, for those of us who have received Christ? Still sinners, but sinners saved by grace. For those, we can't even imagine what God has for us. It's beyond our wildest dreams. But we understand the promise because we came to faith in Jesus Christ and because of his example, his sacrifice, and the gift of the Holy Spirit. This is what we have as the church. In Hebrews, the Hebrew writer wrote, "But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to the innumerable angels in festival gathering." What's this festival gathering about? What is this about? You have come, you are the assembly of the firstborn. Do you know all of us here today? We are the assembly of the firstborn. The firstborn is Jesus Christ, but this is who we are. We are the assembly of the firstborn. That when Jesus returns, we're going up. New bodies, new life, eternal bodies like Jesus. But you have come to Mount Zion when we received Christ, to the city of the living God, to the heavenly Jerusalem, and innumerable angels in festival gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. Yesterday, I watched a media presentation of Noah and his family and the ark and the building, and something really caught my interest at the end where Noah would talk to people. He would warn them about what was to come. But he would also have this invitation to come in. And the statement in this media presentation, Noah says to his wife, if only they would listen. Don't you feel like that sometimes when you share with someone you love? Even a friend or an acquaintance. If only they would listen. You know, Jesus spoke to this. If we jettison now from this Genesis 7 all the way up to the New Testament times of Jesus, Jesus so often would say in regards to salvation, in regards to who he is, in regards to where we're going to go one day. Remember, Jesus would say to him or her, who has ears, let them hear. And to those who have eyes to see, let them see. We invite you today.